All right, so are AI coding tools all they're cracked up to be? Like everyone's talking about GitHub Copilot these days.
It's definitely got everyone's attention, that's for sure.
Yeah, but is it hype or is it the real deal? Like, can it actually help us write more code with fewer bugs and maybe, just maybe, make developers' lives a little bit easier?
Those are the million-dollar questions, right?
Exactly. And to get to the bottom of it all, we're diving into, well, a deep dive, I guess, into this report from Uplevel. They went ahead and analyzed data from actual developers, like a lot of them, 785 to be exact.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid sample size.
For sure. And what makes this even more interesting is that they had a control group, developers not using Copilot, and then a test group, the ones who are using it. So we can actually see what difference Copilot makes in the real world.
It's not just anecdotal evidence this time. It's like, let's get into the data and see what's really going on.
Right. So let's start with the basics. When you think about Copilot,
hmm
what's the promise? What are we hoping it's going to do for us?
Well, I think the dream is faster coding, right? More output, fewer bugs, just like you were saying. Basically, AI as our coding superhero.
Exactly. So did Uplevel find that Copilot actually delivered on that promise?
Well, the results were, how do I put this? A little bit of a mixed bag, to be honest.
A mixed bag. How so?
Well, when they looked at coding speed and how much code people were actually shipping, Copilot didn't really move the needle that much.
Wait, really? I mean, I feel like every developer I know has a story about Copilot, like spitting out code in seconds.
Yeah, and those individual experiences are definitely valuable. But what this data suggests is that those individual wins, they don't always translate to a huge impact on the team level or across a large group of developers.
So it's not like Copilot is useless. It's just,
More nuanced. It's more complicated than just, oh, Copilot equals instant productivity boost.
okay, that's interesting. So more to unpack there. But let's move on to bugs. I feel like this is where AI should really shine, right? Like catching those little errors before they become big problems.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? But this is where the report takes a turn. Are you ready for this?
Hit me with it.
Developers using Copilot actually had a 41% higher bug rate.
41%. Okay, so that's not what we were expecting. I mean, I thought we were talking about AI helping us write better code, not introducing a whole new category of bugs. 41% more bugs. I have to admit, that's a little unnerving. So before we hit the panic button and swear off AI forever, what are some possible explanations for this?
Yeah, 41% definitely gets your attention. It's important to remember this is just one study, and it's still early days for AI coding tools.
So we're not saying Copilot is causing more bugs, but
Exactly. It's more likely a combination of things. One theory is that, you know how we've all gotten so used to spell check and autocorrect?
oh yeah, totally. I rely on those things way too much.
Right. So maybe developers are treating Copilot the same way, kind of like, oh, the AI wrote it, it must be good. Less scrutiny, less double checking.
Makes sense. We're so used to trusting these tools in other areas of our lives, it's easy to let our guard down when it comes to code.
Exactly. And it's not just individual developers, right? It
Mm.
makes you wonder how this impacts the whole code review process.
Oh, that's a good point.
Are teams adjusting how they review code, given that some of it is AI generated now? Or are we still operating under those old assumptions about human error?
It's like those GPS systems from like way back when that would tell you to drive straight into a lake because the maps were so bad.
You'd be following the directions blindly and boom, you're in the water.
Exactly. Except here, instead of a lake, it's a sea of bugs. And instead of a ruined vacation, it's, well, a missed deadline, frustrated developers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, nobody wants that. It really highlights how important it is to understand the limitations of these tools. They're powerful for sure, but they're not perfect.
They're not magic.
Not yet, at least.
So we've got this potential bug situation, but what about the human side of all of this? I mean, does Copilot actually make developers' lives easier? Or does it just add another layer of complexity and pressure?
That's such an important question. We can't just focus on lines of code, right? We have to think about the overall developer experience.
Absolutely.
And Uplevel actually looked at this too, using something they call the sustained always-on metric.
Sustained always on. Okay, I'm intrigued. What is that?
So basically, it measures those extended work hours, like way past quitting time, that often lead to burnout.
So not just your average late night coding session, but a pattern of like consistently working into the wee hours.
Exactly. And the findings here were really interesting. Both the Copilot group and the control group, they actually work less overtime after this study.
Oh, interesting. So that's good, right?
It is. But here's the catch. The decrease was smaller for the Copilot users, like 17% compared to 28% for the control group.
So not exactly a clear win for Copilot on the burnout front then. It seems like even if it's helping reduce some work, there might be other pressures creeping in, things that are keeping developers glued to their screens.
It's weird, right? You'd think having an AI assistant would mean more free time, but maybe it's actually raising the bar for what's considered productive. Or maybe there's this pressure to keep up with the AI, even if that's not sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, if you feel like you should be able to ship features faster because Copilot is giving you a head start, it's easy to get caught in that cycle of always doing more. So, where do we go from here? Let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking about using Copilot. What's Uplevel's advice?
Well, they're very clear that it's still super early days for this technology. There's so much we don't know yet,
Oh, for sure.
but they do have some really practical recommendations.
All right, lay it on us. What's the first thing teams should keep in mind?
The biggest thing is to set clear goals. Don't just assume Copilot is going to magically solve all your problems.
Right.
Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? Faster development, fewer bugs, happier developers?
It's like you need to define success before you bring in the AI cavalry.
Exactly. And their second recommendation goes hand in hand with that, training. You can't just throw this powerful new tool at developers and expect them to instantly become Copilot masters.
It's like giving someone a fancy espresso machine and expecting them to make perfect latte art on their first try. It takes practice, right? Training is key.
Exactly. Developers need to understand Copilot's strengths and weaknesses, how to use it effectively, how to spot potential issues. That all takes time and effort.
So set clear goals, invest in training. What else is on Uplevel's AI for Developers checklist?
Their third point is don't just trust your gut, you know?
Right.
Like, don't rely on those, oh, Copilot changed my life stories. Actually track the data.
So like put Copilot to the test just like you would with any other tool.
Exactly. See if it's actually moving the needle on the things that matter to you. Is development time going down? Are you seeing fewer bugs?
Yeah.
What about those late night coding sessions? Are those decreasing?
Measure, measure, measure. Got it. Okay, what's their final recommendation?
Experiment. What works for one team might not work for another. So run your own A/B tests, play around with different approaches, see what gets you the results you're looking for.
I love that. So it's not about blindly following the hype. It's about being thoughtful and figuring out how to integrate these tools in a way that makes sense for your specific team, your specific needs.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole field so interesting. We're at the very beginning of understanding how AI is going to reshape how we code.
It really does feel like uncharted territory. And yeah, these AI tools, they might be our compasses and maps, but we're still figuring out which way is north.
And how to avoid those metaphorical waterfalls.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Copilot and the future of developer productivity, what's the one big thing you want listeners to take away from all of this?
AI coding tools like Copilot, they're powerful, no doubt. But they're not magic, they're tools. And like any tool, how effective they are, it all depends on the skill and the intention of the person using them.
It's about finding that balance, right? Like, yeah, let's embrace these new tools, but let's also remember that coding, it's a human thing. It's about creativity. It's about problem solving, that spark of ingenuity. You can't just automate that away.
Absolutely. This is just the beginning of a much bigger conversation, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Me too. And something tells me this won't be our last deep dive into the world of AI and the future of coding. But until then, happy coding, everyone.